George Janko flew to Romania recently and sat down with Andrew Tate in a fascinating interview. Part one on YouTube already has 9 million views. And he asked Andrew Tate why the monogamy-only model isn't working anymore. And I can't wait for you to hear his insights. But before we get into it, my name is Rob Kowalski, and this channel exists to educate and inspire you to be the men and women that God created you to be by sharing unpopular and often uncomfortable truths.
In days of old, high-value men, important men, kings, warriors, whatever, had multiple wives. And they had to look after the multiple wives, or they had mistresses, and they had children with them all, and they had to look after them all. In certain cultures today, that is still the case. In certain religions today, that is still the case. In the Christian world, in the Western world, we have said that's unacceptable, we should be monogamous. But then you have the majority of men who are monogamous are cheating. The ones who are not cheating are using prostitutes sometimes, or going to strip clubs sometimes, or consuming pornography. So they're not truly, actually loyal. So you've moved the idea of a man having 3 or 4 women he loves and taking care of, to a man having 1 woman he's supposed to love and doing a whole bunch of things in secret. You've just subsidized monogamy and you've removed it all towards pornography. And so then you have to sit and argue, why does so much degeneracy happen in the West? Is it because we are not allowing men to be more true to their instincts? This is all brand new thoughts for me, and I'm just speaking as I think. But let's look at another example, right?
Before, can I tap in with that?
All right, I'm paused there. Say what you want about Andrew Tate. He's a smart guy. He is a smart guy. And he just said exactly what happens in the West. We subsidized it, monogamy. So now instead, you got all these guys out sneaking around. 30% of the men right now on dating apps are married. That's crazy. 30% of the men on the dating apps are married, and prostitutes and porn and all the things. It's because of this enforced monogamy. It's created this cesspool. Even like he says in Russia, this Christianation. The guys, the rich men, and I don't know if he maybe gets into it actually after this. Actually, let me play it a little bit. I want to let you hear him say it.
So what's your example, right? So I have an example, Christ. He gives me his way and I follow it. If I had to follow men and their needs, I'd be burned up tomorrow.
And I don't think it's needs. I don't think men cheat because of needs. Think about it from a societal perspective. I'm making an overall societal observation, the fact that now we have monogamous societies, but because they're not truly monogamous, all of the desire is being outsourced towards degeneracy, as opposed to having a society where a man is allowed more than 1 wife, for example.
Boom.
And the degeneracy isn't needed. You don't need pornography and you don't need prostitution if you're allowed to have 2, 3, 4 wives if you're successful. And the point.
Yes, thank you. He doesn't even know the Bible, and he just explained it perfectly. This is why God allowed it, because it promotes degeneracy when you don't allow it. It's happening, and it's because of enforced monogamy. No one's saying anybody has to do it, but if a man is successful enough, he's allowed to do it under God's laws. That's what sin is, guys. Sin is transgression of the law. That's what Paul says. Where there is no law, there is no sin. Show me in God's law where this is sin. You can't. It's not there. People say it's sin. Only God only allowed it, and all this other bullshit. It's not there. It's not. It's actually regulated in Exodus 21:10. If a man takes a second wife, it's commanded in places. Exodus 22:16. If you go out and sleep with a virgin, you got to marry her. It's God would not do that if this was sin. This is the mess that it causes right here. It promotes degeneracy. It promotes deception. People cheating. Now, should they do it or not? People can say, "Man, how about men just don't cheat on their wife?" I don't think they should. This is what monogamy only is causing, because versus them being able to freely say, listen, go to their wife and be like, look, I take good care of you. This would be the best way to do it.
Christian men, I just started a brand new Facebook group called the Unplugged Christian Alphas. You hear me talk about the fact that 80% of the women are sleeping with 20% of the men right now, pushing the majority men out of the sexual marketplace. And I am passionate about helping men level up and move into that top 20% and become men of options. So if you're a Christian man and you want to pursue excellence, join the Unplugged Christian Alphas on Facebook. It's 100% free, and I'll see you on the inside.
People say, why don't you get a first wife before you go get a second wife? That's what people tell me. Before you start talking about marrying more than one, why don't you go get a first one? I'm like, so you want me to just spring this on her later? Just get married to one and then tell her after we're married down the road? Like, that would be a really shitty thing to do. No, I'm going to tell her up front and be like, look, I like you. I dig you. I think I love you. Let's get married. But I want to let you know that there's a chance that I might want to marry a second down the road. And you can't divorce me if I do this. You tell them up front, and you better treat her ass so good for her to say yes. You better be such a man. You better be so freaking masculine and so irresistible that she would say yes to that. But instead, what we do is we promise them monogamy, all righteous monogamy on the surface, and then we sneak around and act like a scumbag behind their back. I'm not saying that's right, but that is what's happening now. I'm not doing it, but that's what people are doing, versus being the kind of man that could go to their woman and be honest with her and say, look, this is what I'm going to do. And if she bounces, she has the right to, and she may, but always having that as your biblical right to say, I can if I want to, and having to be a man enough to be able to have that conversation and treat her so good that you could actually say that to her. And she wouldn't leave you because you're that guy. That's how rare you are. That's how unique and special you are. And you got to become that man. And I think that's why God allowed it, because it makes men self-actualize. I know nothing pushes a man to become their best self like a woman, like the prospects of sex, to be honest. Nothing's going to make you achieve money. Nothing's going to make you get your body in shape. Like this girl's coming over from the Netherlands. You best believe I'm in the gym. I want to look good when she gets here. I'm working harder than I've ever worked, getting my money right, because I'm thinking there's a good chance I'm going to be married in the not too distant future. And of course, am I thinking about sex? Of course, and companionship and all the other things. But that's what motivates a man. So if a man knew, hey, if I get everything in a row and I get my life together so much so that I could support 2 women, 3 women, I could have, that's going to push men to be excellent and achieve. And guess what's going to happen to the divorce rate? Goes down. Fatherless homes down, because the men aren't leaving the home. Again, is it better than fornication and divorce? Yes, and that's exactly what Martin Luther said. I'm not saying it's the best. I do believe in a sinless world, monogamy would be best. But to say monogamy only in a fallen world is not biblical, guys.
Thanks for joining my Facebook group. Now, if you want the best piece of advice I've ever been given on having success with the opposite sex for free, go to my website, robbkowalski.com, and join my email list. I'll send you valuable content and just keep you up to date on everything that's happening in my life. Thanks.
Let's go back to this video.
I was going to make earlier is that in certain countries, this is still the case. And I'm just speaking here in generalities. I don't have proof for any of this, but if you look at Russia, Russia is a Christian nation. There's a lot of Muslims as well, but it's traditionally a Christian nation. But if you're a very rich, powerful Russian man, and I've been to Moscow, I can assure you, you have maybe 4 or 5 wives. Or not wives, 4 or 5 girls.
Yeah.
And your wife understands about who the other girls are, and she doesn't really care. Don't look, don't care, don't ask. I have a Bentley, I have a big house, I have the children. He plays around with these other girls sometimes. I don't care, I'm his wife, and that's just how things are set up. That particular man who's very rich, he's not interested in pornography, he's not interested in prostitutes, he's satisfied, he has enough for whatever his ego desires or his heart desires. Then you look at the West, and you look at the most degenerate things which can possibly happen, which are actually levels above prostitution and pornography. If you look at Epstein's Island, for example, when you have very rich, powerful men and they're told by the public sphere, you're not allowed to have more than 1 woman, but they don't have God to control them. Then they say, okay, how can I satisfy myself if God's not restricting me? The society's saying I can only have 1 woman. I'm not allowed to have 4 or 5, which would satisfy me in some regard for my ego or unhealthy reason or whatever my reason is. So I'm going to end up doing things in private. I'm going to end up doing things in secret. And then you have Epstein's Island appear. So it's interesting. God is important, and God is extremely required to restrict people. But if you take the God out of the element, and you only use society to try and restrict the sexual desires of people and tell them they have to be monogamous, you're going to end up with more degeneracy than if men were allowed to be and have more than 1 wife. Does that make sense?
Amen. God, he's right on the money. So think about what he just said. So there's this guy that reached out to me since I started making content around this. I'm not going to mention his name, but he had a wife. Okay, his first wife, he had some kids, and then I don't know what happened with his wife, if she cut the sex off or kicked him out of the house or something, but she basically pushed him into the arms of another woman. And I'm not saying it was her fault at all, but he basically started seeing this other woman. He ends up having a physical relationship with her. He falls in love with this younger woman, and he messaged me. I'm genuinely in love with them both. I don't want to leave my first wife. I love her. I have kids with her. I treat her so good. She won't leave because I treat her that good, but she's so mad because he's been honest with her about this other girl. She pushed him to the point where he's just, fuck it, you're not going to back me in a corner. He just told her, but she won't leave because of how good he treats her. And she knows it ain't easy out there. Which, if she goes and leaves, it might be hard out there for an older single woman with kids to go out and find a good man. Okay. And most women, that are single know that this is the number. It's a buyer's market. Let's be honest. It is a buyer's market right now. The men are controlling it. There's a lot more homes for sale than there are buyers. So look, I'm in love with them both. And I just started watching your content, and it just makes so much sense. He's, what can I do? I said, you can send her information and videos and she's a Christian. I'm like, maybe if she knew God was cool with this, that might change her mind a little bit. What he said to me was, he goes, dude, and I knew the guy from the clubs. He goes, you knew what a scumbag I was. He goes, I've never been so good. I don't have any desire for any more than just these 2. I've never behaved so well within the marriage as far as being faithful and all that. For whatever reason, he's got 2 of them that he's in love with, and he has no desire to go out and fuck anybody else. But he used to be a big man whore. Now look at what's going on now because of enforced monogamy, because you tell people, men, they have to be monogamous. Then they go out and they do the worst things, sex trafficking and prostitution and all kinds of shady shit. So what's better? Even the guys in Russia, this Christian nation, practicing this. For the most part, they're practicing polygyny. The wives know, but they're being told that this is off limits, that you shouldn't do this, and they're just doing it anyway. I know that this would be a far better solution to a big problem that we're experiencing right now in the culture.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment below with your biggest takeaway, a question, or even an objection for that matter, and subscribe to my channel before you leave. I greatly appreciate it, and feel free to share this video with a friend. Thanks.